Audio test now. Should be muted. If you guys are following me on Facebook, YouTube, or anything like that, drop a 1 in the chat if you can hear me. I want to make sure the audio is good. Just drop a 1 in the chat. Let me know if you can hear me. And then we'll try to see if we can get... all right, appreciate it. Thank you. So it looks like we're good on Facebook, YouTube. You guys are dropping 1s. I appreciate it. There is like nobody on TikTok. That's crazy. Usually there's a bunch. John, Josh, good to see you guys. The first 2 guys that commented 1, I can't see your name. So if you want to interact, comment, you have to click the link above this video or somewhere around the video. There should be a link. It says about StreamYard. You have to hit that for me to approve. I mean, not you have to approve that before I can see your name. Otherwise, I don't know who you are. Josh, I see you on TikTok. Let me know. Okay, you're good. So you're on 2 platforms. Josh is multitasking on Facebook and TikTok. Right on. All right, guys. Like I said, last Monday we took the day off for Labor Day. I hope you guys had a good weekend, refreshed, back at it. Today we're going to be talking some more about. I shouldn't say some more. We're going to talk about sales. We're talking sales today. We're talking about 2 of my favorite tools that I have in my sales toolbox, and we're going to dive into both of those. If you guys have any questions about any of that stuff, go ahead and drop them in the chat, and we'll have a discussion about it and get a little more in detail about that. If you're on TikTok, I added this little follower goal right here, so we're trying to boost my followers. Add an extra what is that? 12 followers. That's a low bar. We set the bar extremely low. We're trying to add 12 followers on TikTok. So, number 1, what is labeling? Labeling is what we're going to talk about first. This is my primary tool that I use and teach for sales, for clients, and for myself when I'm talking to people. Labeling is, I did not create this. You can learn more about it with by Chris Voss. Never Split the Difference. He taught this. I picked it up, use it in my sales training, and it works great. Use it in my sales process, rather, not training, but I do teach this in the sales training as well. But labeling is labeling an emotion. Now, before we get into that, I want to explain why this is important. Why do people care about emotion, right? Emotion is what is the driver behind why people do anything. Why do we get married? Why do we have boyfriend, girlfriends? Why do we get dogs? Why do we have kids? Why do we buy things? Everything is driven around emotion, right? It's what makes us feel good, what makes us happy. Those are things that we want to try, or pain avoidance. We're trying to avoid a certain type of pain or uncomfortableness, right? Those are all emotional driven reasons. Why do we have a house? I mean, we could live in the woods. We could just build a shelter out of trees and branches and leaves and live out in the woods. It's, potentially free or low cost. Well, it's because that's pain avoidance. Who wants to live in that when we can live in a nice bed, comfy bed, and all these other things? Have cars that take us everywhere. We used to have horse and buggies. It would take you half a day just to get into town to buy supplies and get back, which now can be done in less than an hour. So a lot of everything that we do in life is around emotion. And what labeling does is it allows you to label the emotion. Why is that important? Because we all want to be understood. We all want to feel like people understand us, like they get us. We want our spouse to understand us. A lot of our frustrations in our relationships come because of misunderstanding. They come because of expectations that were set that the other person had no idea was an expectation, and they didn't meet that expectation because they didn't even know it existed. Then we get frustrated, right? And so when you're dealing with your clients and you're talking to your clients and they have certain expectations of what they expect you to do as the contractor for them, then and you don't do that, then they get frustrated or they feel disappointed because those expectations weren't met. And so this is the same with their emotions. Everyone comes supercharged with emotions. I just recorded a video on TikTok replying to a guy who's supercharged with emotions because he thinks that I'm telling contractors to rip people off by charging for a consultation to go out to their house. That's an emotional based response, right? There was no fact gathering that happened prior to that interaction. It was just an emotional based response. So we're all very emotional human beings. So why don't we use that to our advantage in the sales process? And that's what labeling allows us to do. Labeling allows us to state verbally what we believe as the contractor is what the client is trying to convey is most important to them. So let me give you an example. Sometimes, before I do that, sometimes it's very easy and obvious. So other times it's not. It's not obvious. It's not easy. And so part of the sales process is learning how to ask specific questions to gather this information, to draw this information out of them while we're talking to them. That's what the sales training is designed to do. It's to teach you the elements, the questions, the techniques, the tactics, the strategy to get this information out of the client so you can make that emotional connection so they will feel almost obligated to want to hire you. Now, this is super easy to do against contractors because most contractors don't sell this way. Most contractors don't understand the value of emotion. Most contractors are trying to sell based on logic. And here's the thing about human beings. We buy things based on emotion, and then we use logic to justify the purchase, right? I don't need to buy another gun. I have plenty of guns. And if you ask, they lost them all in the fishing accident last week. It was terrible. It was tragic. They all fell in the bottom of the ocean if you're trying to come look for my guns. But I don't need another gun. There's no reason whatsoever I need another gun. I have plenty. I want another gun. I want lots more guns. So how do I justify that to my wife? Right? I have to come up. I have to justify it to myself. I have to justify it to my wife. I have to justify it to spend the money on it. There's lots of different ways that, things that you have to justify. Emotionally, I want it. Logically, I don't need it. But I'm going to use logic to justify the emotional purchase, right? So when you're talking to your clients and they say things like, I ask them, so, besides you and I, who else is excited about this project? And they say, well, my husband, but he's not very excited about it. And she goes on, and I use some mirroring, which we'll get into in a little bit later. But I use some mirroring. I get some more things, and she's going on and saying he's not excited because he doesn't like spending the money. And the last time they did a project, they thought it was going to be X amount and ended up going way over their budget, and it wasn't a good experience. And he just doesn't like spending money. And she's saying all these things. And I could say something like, it sounds like, let's say it's Mary. Mary, it sounds like for Rick, making sure he's getting a really good value out of this deal is really important. And she could say, like, yeah, absolutely. He doesn't mind spending the money. He just wants to make sure that he's getting the value there. Right? That's just one little example. Or if they're saying things about, I ask them, have you ever done a project like this before? And they go, yeah, we had our kitchen remodel last, a couple years ago. Oh, how was that experience? It wasn't that great. We had a contractor who we thought was going to be really good, and turns out it wasn't that great. It just wasn't a bad experience. I'm using some tactical empathy, which is another tool that I teach, but tactical empathy is basically real empathy tactically used. Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. What happened? What went wrong? Well, they took our money. They started the project late, blah, 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 blah. They're telling me all these bad things that they had with this previous contractor. I could label this emotion, or I could label this experience and say, after hearing you talk about this experience, it seems like having a trusted contractor who's going to do what they say they're going to do, when they say they're going to do it, how they say they're going to do it, is really important to you guys. And they go, yeah, it really is. It is important. Boom. Now I just labeled that emotion. I labeled what's important to them. Now, it may not seem like it's an emotion, But at the end of the day, it is it is an emotion, because that's what drives us in our decisions. So labeling is simply labeling the emotion, and we usually use either it seems like, it sounds like, it feels like. Now, it feels like doesn't get used very often, but the conversation, when you do a label, it always starts with at least one of these two. It sounds like, it seems like. If you don't say those two things, it seriously degrades the value of what you're saying. So you're saying it's important that you have a contractor who does all these things, blah, 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 blah. That's not as powerful as saying it sounds like, it seems like this is really important to you. It seems like we really need to make sure we get this right for your mother's sake. It sounds like you have a lot of bad experiences. And so it's really important for us to make sure that we're showing you every step of the way what's happening. Yes, yes, that's right. Yes, that's it. When you get them to confirm your label, then you know you're on to something. And that's when people feel like you get them, right? They feel like you understand them. Yeah, that's exactly right. It's important to us that you communicate well. It's important to us that you show up on time. It's important to us that you take care of our pets while we're gone. You know, that you don't let them out or let them get hurt or whatever. It's important that you take care of our house, that you don't have dust everywhere. It's important that you don't tear up our landscaping while you're putting the pool in, blah, 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 blah. Whatever it is to them that's important based on their emotion, that's what you want to tap into. If you think about why do people do anything why do people do any projects, right? They don't just wake up one morning and be like, I'm going to remodel my bathroom just for the sake of it. No, there's some emotional stress or emotional reason as to why they want to remodel their bathroom. And it could be anything. It could be anything. It can be simply because their in-law, the wife's in-law, her mother-in-law, every time she comes over, criticizes her bathroom about how ugly it is or how dated it is. And it could be a perfectly functional bathroom, nothing wrong with it. Some people may even say it's a beautiful bathroom, but their in-law, her mother-in-law, is constantly criticizing her. And for her, the wife, that's enough of a reason to want to remodel their bathroom. That could be it. And if you get that out of them during the sales process, that, yeah, this is what's important, this is the driving motivation, and they're not going to come out and say that. They're not going to come out and say, well, the reason I want to remodel my bathroom is because my mother-in-law comes over and criticizes me all the time. No, they're not going to come out and tell you that. You have to dig. You have to ask questions. You have to use these tools, these tactics that we teach on how to get that out of them. But once you can label it on them, once you can label that emotion, now you get them. Now it's for them, it's like a big sigh of relief of like, oh, yeah, this contractor gets me. He understands what's important. But what do we do as contractors? It's all about the logic selling. Look at my pictures. Look at how amazing I am. Look at how great we are. We're so quality driven. We're so reliable. You know, we do all the great communicators. We have a great website, blah, 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 blah. Been in business for so many years. We have all these awards. Those are all logic backed reasons. And I'm not saying those things aren't important and they don't contribute to the overall effectiveness of your selling, but that is not why people buy from you. It's not. A lot of contractors do quality work. They don't get the sale, right? They use that to justify the purchase that they made based on their emotion. So if you and I are competing on a job and you're at $20,000 and I'm at $30,000 for the exact same job, I make the emotional connection. I label it and I say, you know, Sally, it sounds like it's really important that you just have a contractor that you can trust, who's going to show up every morning on time, take care of your house, make sure your pets don't get out, and really just treat this house like it's their own. Yes, that's what we're looking for, Brad. Right? I make that connection. Meanwhile, you just show up, get your tape measure, make some measurements, give them an estimate. You're 20,000, I'm 30,000. Now what I have done is created that emotional bond. You haven't done that because you brought your portfolio out with all your pictures of what you're doing, right? You got your pictures of like, look at all these projects we did. We're amazing. You should hire us because we're amazing. Meanwhile, I never even show you any pictures at all. I just have this emotional connection with you. Who do you think they're going to hire? I would bet most of the time they're going to hire me over you, even though I'm $10,000 more. Now, here's the interesting part of what happens. They talk to me, they talk to you. Now they have to decide on who they want to hire, right? The spouses or whatever are having a conversation, and they're going to say, well, they both do good work. Like they both have, I've seen their websites. I talked to them. They both do good work. They come highly recommended. But I really liked Brad. I really felt like he understood what we wanted. I really felt connected to him. I felt like he, was interested in our project. Whereas the other contractor, I think he would do a good job, but there was something about him that really just didn't connect with. Right? That is the emotional connection that we're doing. And the best part is this is 100% on purpose. This is a fabricated response. Now, some people may say like this is manipulating people. In a way, it is. However, we're manipulating them for their benefit, not just for ours. Like we're not out there just trying to use these tactics to, convince people, high pressure sales, get them to buy from us. That's not what we're doing here at all. It's not what we're doing. But when you make a strong emotional connection with someone, then you can't help but want to do work with them. And if it does come down to price, they're going to be disappointed that they couldn't hire you. And those are the people who will usually come back to you and say, hey, Brad, we really liked you. We got another estimate. It was $10,000 less than you. Is there any way you can match their price or come down off their price at all? A lot of people will get offended by this. And that's when you see the contractors like, well, you just hire them and then, don't call us when they screw it up and it's going to be double to come back and fix it. That's the ego response that contractors have because they didn't get picked the first time. In reality, you should be excited about this comment because they've come back to you and said, hey, we like you, but the other guy was cheaper and we can't understand why there's a discrepancy here. Is there any way you can come down on price? This is a good thing because if they didn't like you, they would have never even asked you in the first place. Right? So this is a little sidebar. If you ever get a comment from a customer wanting to know if you can match price or come down on price, that means they like you the best. But the other guy was cheaper and they can't justify in their head why there's a price discrepancy. Right? And you can use some of these tactics to go back into that and understand. I wish I could do that, Mary. I really wish I could lower the price. But if I was able to do that, wouldn't that mean I was overcharging you to begin with? Right? That's just a word track that we can use. I want to get back into the conversation. Mary, when we talked on the phone, you mentioned it was really important for you to have a contractor that you can trust who's going to deliver these things so that you didn't have another bad experience. I'm just curious, are you confident that the other contractor is going to deliver that level of experience, that level of confidence? It's a simple conversation. I'm not trying to accuse anybody. I'm just curious, is the other contractor someone that you are confident enough that they're going to deliver that level of experience? And they may say, well, I mean, no, that's why we reached out to you, right? Like there's so many ways you can go with this. And I don't want to go down that rabbit hole right now. But the connection is what allows you to have that to where it's a struggle for them. You want your contractors, if they're comparing you to you want your customers, if they're comparing you to other contractors, you want them to be really disappointed that they can't hire you. That's the position you want to be in. You don't want to be in a commodity war where they just have 4 estimates lined up on a table and they're looking at the numbers and going line item down and then picking the one they want. You want them to look at the estimates and see 3 estimates at a different price and they see you as the person who they connected with. Well, this is Brad. Really liked him. I really feel like he's going to deliver the best experience. Yeah, we had Chris and Tom and John. Chris and Tom, I didn't like their vibes at all. I don't think they would do it. But this other guy, John and Brad, it comes down to John and Brad. Brad's $10,000 more than John, but John is, I don't know, man. I don't know, honey. There's just something about John. I don't know. I just didn't fit. And there was that one review they got a few months ago saying that they didn't follow through on something, blah, 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 whatever. They're going to start justifying why they have this emotional connection with you, right? And if you don't think that's true about emotion, why is that when something tragic happens, usually people are bonded by the emotion of that? Yeah, John is a sketchy name, Luke. I agree. Especially if their name's John and they do landscaping. You got to watch those guys. If you guys are on TikTok, I'm poking fun of the guys on Facebook. One of my clients is named John. He's watching. We're just poking fun. Richie says, I have an HVAC 2-person business, and sometimes I get customers that ask equipment cost versus profit. Are you saying when you give them an estimate, like they're asking you how much profit you're making off the equipment? Like guys, you're going to have people who are tire kickers and who are 100% price conscious that are going to call you. Like there's no way to get around them not calling you unless you have a very strict screening process through your phone calls or your websites. Richie, there's probably some dark magic tactics that you can use in the HVAC business to try and tell people why they should hire you. But I promise you that if you make them feel like you're the only person that understands and is going to give them the value that they want, it's going to be much harder for them to understand or ask about the cost and profit. Doesn't mean that they're not going to. I mean, I may ask about profit just from a curiosity standpoint because I in the business world and I understand business and I'm just curious. Like, hey, what kind of profit margins do you get in the HVAC business or whatever? So, I mean, not always like someone asking you that's always going to be like they just want the cheapest price. It could be that another contractor that they talk to put it in their ear as a sales tactic. We don't mark up our equipment. We give it to you at cost, but then somehow their labor rate's way higher or whatever. Like people, you can hide profits and markups and all that stuff. And so there may be somebody put it in their ear that they should ask you that question, but they don't really know what they're looking for. Most people are not educated enough to understand what they're paying for, why it costs so much, what the overhead is, what the implications of all that. Most people are not, don't have enough experience to understand that. They just know they're supposed to ask you these questions, but they don't really know how to interpret that information per se. That's not to say that people are dumb. I'm just saying that your average consumer doesn't know these things. If you told them, equipment's 2,000 and the profit is 4,000, that doesn't really tell them anything, is what I'm saying, right? So you just try to avoid those conversations with that. If they ask you, you can be straight with them. Equipment costs this much. This is how much profit I get. And if they don't like it, they can go somewhere else. I'm telling you though, but if you make those emotional connections with people, they're less likely to ask you those questions. When you like someone, when you truly like someone and you know them and you like them and trust, which by the way, that's the steps of getting a consumer. They have to know you first. They have to know you exist. They have to like you to a certain extent or like the product or services that you deliver. And then they have to trust. Number 3, they have to trust that you're going to actually deliver that. And the emotional part is where you build the trust. Because when you emotionally connect with someone, you trust them. There's I don't want to say psychological, but because it's emotional, it really is emotional. But the psychological after effect of making an emotional connection is trust. And there are people out there that know who are scam artists, con artists who know how to manipulate people using these things to get what they want. There are bad people out there that know how to manipulate this. Most contractors that I talk to don't understand this at the basic level because you guys are technicians. You understand. I say you, myself included. We are technicians who are good at swinging the hammer, but we're not good at connecting emotionally, right? So the contractors who understand and take the time, who actually learn how to do these sales tactics, will have a much higher closing rate. You'll have a much higher profit margin. You'll have a much happier and easier business. That much I can promise you. I have tons of case studies that can prove that. So that's labeling. I want to recap real quick. Labeling is when you label the emotion. Sounds like, seems like. Sounds like this is really important to you. It seems like you've had a lot of bad experiences, and we may need to hold your hand a little bit, or we may need to give you more information during this process so you feel more comfortable. Whatever it might be. Sounds like, seems like. That's the label. The second thing I want to talk about is mirroring. And mirroring and labeling are my two go-to tools. You could almost be a good salesman with just using labeling and mirroring. And if you use those in conjunction with each other, it adds like the 1-2 punch. Like one's the jab, one's the hook, right? And they can go either way. But mirroring is a tactic that is used to get more information without asking another question. Because a lot of us want to be like interrogators and we want to ask you question after question after question. When do you want this done? What's important to you? What kind of time frame? When do you how long have you been thinking about getting this done? Who else have you talked to? We start asking these questions. Have you talked to other contractors? Do you have a design? Do you have this? And we're just asking questions like it's an interrogation, because we're just trying to get all the information that we want so that we can determine if they're going to be a good lead or not. And that's not how you want to do sales. Is that what we're doing? Yes. But we're wrapping it up. We're putting wrapping paper around it, putting a nice bow on there, and we're giving it to you like a really nice present. But when you take the wrapping off and you open the box, what's in there is just a bunch of questions that we want answers to. The difference is the wrapping that you put on this box. Okay. So when you put the wrapping on there, it makes it nice and presentable. It makes it pretty and something that you want to open because there's intrigue there. It's exciting. So we create that in the sales process. And when you use mirroring, it allows you to ask more questions to get more information without asking more questions. So mirroring is when you essentially take one or two, maybe three words out of a statement that someone says. It's usually the last 1 to 3 words. It can sometimes be in the middle of the statement, but you're simply repeating the words they say. And so, as an example, talking to a customer, and I say, Mary, besides you and I, who else is excited about getting your kitchen remodeled? By the way, that's one of the questions that we ask. Besides you and I, who else is excited about this? It's more of a question because we want to know who the decision makers are, who all is involved in this decision making process. Because if there's a husband involved and he's the check writer and the wife is the information gatherer, we got to convince them both. We got to talk to both of them, right? I'm sure none of you have ever had the experience of selling the wife, going out, meeting with the spouse, the wife, everyone's on board. You submit the estimate. The husband comes in and says, vetoed because I'm not spending that much money. It's probably just me. You guys might have a lot better experience, but you've probably never had that experience where the husband vetoed the project because it costs too much, yet you've never had a single word or conversation with the husband. This is why we ask a question like, who else is excited about this project? Because we want to know who are all the players, who's all involved. And if the wife says, well, my husband, Steve, but he's not as excited as I am, I can mirror that and say, not as excited or not excited, right? I don't want to use more than 3 words usually. Not excited. Now, here's the key part of this mirror, and this is where people will ruin it. You have to add an inflection, which is a rise at the end. Not excited. I'm over exaggerating now. Not excited. Inflection. That's the question mark. That little inflection in the word is the actual question being asked. It's the question mark. Not excited. No, he doesn't like spending money. This is like the third project we've done. And, I generally get what I want, but this is just kind of the process that we have to go through, where at first he says, no, I don't want to spend that much money. And then by the end of the project, by the end of the discussions, I end up getting what I want. Right. Like, I mean, there's no telling what they're going to say, but it's just a simple way of asking a question without asking a question. If I said, oh, your husband's not excited, why isn't he excited? Right. You could do that. It's not as powerful as saying not excited. No, he's just not excited. He's not really. Whenever I start talking about projects, he starts getting a little, tense, because he knows it's going to cost him a bunch of money. Right? That's a mirror. Mirroring someone is repeating 2 to 3 words out of their statement. Usually the last 2 to 3 words, sometimes can be in the middle. But you have to do this, and you have an inflection. If you don't have an inflection, it could actually hurt you, because when you do was it deflection? What's the opposite of inflection? Somebody put in the chat what the opposite of inflection is. If you have an inflection, is it a deflection? That doesn't sound right. When you do that and you drop off, it's actually like confirming. So it's like, what was that I just said? That not excited. I could say like, not excited, not excited, not excited. That's like confirming, not excited. Yeah. Yep. Not excited. Not excited. That's the inflection. Not excited, not excited. It doesn't seem like it's much, but if you don't put an inflection on the end, it's not a question mark. It's a statement. This may seem like a very, inconsequential little detail that doesn't matter. It matters 100%. Now, here's one more thing when you do a mirror, and even clients in the Profit Club and Sales Accelerator, they've probably done this, and I've corrected them. We've talked about this. A lot of us feel like there's not enough being said, because we typically have been told that we have to sell ourselves on a phone call, on a sales call. We have to sell ourselves. That's not true at all. You don't have to sell yourself. You have to connect emotionally. And so what we do is we like to fill in blanks, and we like to add stuff. So in that example, if I said, Mary, who else is excited about this? And she said, well, my husband, but he's not very excited about this project. And I say, not excited? Because if he's not excited, then that might be a problem, right? We add stuff to the end, and you don't want to do that. It's just not excited. And you shut your mouth and let them respond. They will respond. I promise you 100% of the time they will respond. They may just say, yeah, I'm not excited, or yes, or no. That's a possibility. Usually, though, they will tell you more than just that. But you can't add to the end of it. You can't say not excited because I was just curious what's going on there. No, don't do that. Not excited? That's it. Shut your mouth. And so when you learn how to use labeling and mirroring in conjunction with what that is, you can you get a lot of powerful data from your client, and really start to build this, what I call the motive matrix. And by the way, you guys watching this, my clients who are watching this, have never heard me even discuss this, but we're talking about the motive matrix. And when you start collecting data, you can start building the motive matrix, right? And that's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to put the pieces of the puzzle together so that we can formulate an entire picture of what's important to them, and then spill that back to them whenever we do a recap. And that's a whole nother tool that I'm not going to get into today. But whenever we recap everything that's important to them, that seals the deal. That's the confirmation that we've been listening this whole time, because we recap everything that we talk about. By the way, if you guys aren't taking notes on sales calls about the client, then that is number one indicator that you don't know how to do sales. I'm just going to put it out there. Somebody might disagree with me. You may say, no, I'm a professional salesman. I'm the highest and I don't ever take notes. Kudos to you. But I'm just telling you that the guys that I know that are the best in the world, they take notes on sales calls because they want that information. They want to be able to recall that information later. I want to be able to 15 minutes into the call say, John, you said something really interesting earlier, and I just wanted to ask you about it. You said that your daughter was going to be using this space mainly, and I'm just curious, should we get her input in on this? Is that something we need to include her in on? Now, if he mentioned his daughter 15 minutes ago and never brought it up again, and now I'm bringing it back up later, what does that tell you about the person? It tells you they're listening. It tells you that they're actually paying attention. It tells you that they care about the details. That's somebody who is passionate about doing their work because they want to make sure that every single thing is right, whether it's their pet, their daughter, their mother, whatever detail it may be. We're going to hit on that. We're writing, taking notes. But if you don't take notes, and you would go a step further if they mention the name. You mentioned earlier that your daughter Rachel was going to be using this space. Do you think we should include her in any of this discussion, or is that just something you guys are going to be handling? Like, if you just ask that question by the fact that you knew the daughter's name was Rachel and that he said it 15 minutes ago in the conversation, that's that emotional connection, guys. That's a contractor who cares about the details. That's a detail that most people will never even connect with. But what we think and what we've been told is we get our clipboard out, we show up for free estimate, and we start writing down things. Okay, so you want to have a bookshelf here and you want to do this and this. Let me get my tape measure out. Okay, yep. You're looking at it's going to be about $15,000. No emotional connection, no understanding of what's important, none of that. You're just basically giving them an estimate. And that's not sales, that's order taking. So I want to open this up now for questions. We got about 10 minutes left. I want to answer any questions you have around labeling, mirroring, or anything sales related. Throw them in the comments. I'm happy to help. I'm happy to give you feedback. Even if you had a situation with, like Richie said with his client, if you've had a sales situation where you don't know what you should have done, maybe you didn't know like how to handle that, or they asked you a question, you don't know how to respond to it, throw it in the comments and let's talk about it. I want to make sure I'm providing you guys with a ton of value. And hopefully, by the way, if this has been helpful, do me a favor, drop a 2 in the chat. Just put a 2 in the chat if any of this has been helpful for you today. Get me a drink there. Oscar says 2. Ramert says 2. Appreciate you guys. These are just 2 of the tools that we use in the sales accelerator in the profit sales system. What I've called the profit sales system, because the whole sales system is designed to make you more profit. That's what it's for. It's in, like the Contractor Profit Blueprint. If you guys are on TikTok, you can see right above my head. It says number 3 step is to accelerate your sales. That's where we teach you all of this stuff so that you can become, a sales master, sales craftsman, a sales warrior, whatever you want to put in there. I don't care. We want to make you good at sales. So the profit sales system is designed to make you more profit. It's also designed to save you time and money, energy, right? I have one client. He had a very successful landscaping business, or still does. But when he came on board, he had a very successful. He was doing really well financially, like really, really well. and he was working like 90 hours a week. I mean, just 90 hours every single week to have that level of success. He had 3 young kids. He never got to see them. And all he was looking for was a better way to do sales. And after learning the profit sales system, applying it in his business, he was able to drop from like 80, 90-hour weeks down to 50, 40-hour weeks. And for the first time in like, I think it was like maybe 6 or 7 years, he took a Friday afternoon off and spent it with his daughter. Like that, to him, that's all that mattered. And we were able to help him do that by teaching him how to pre-qualify people over the phone. Like, it's not always about, I need to make more money. Sometimes it's about saving time. Another guy who's on the Facebook group, he saved a ton of time, has a successful business. He just looking for ways to save time, pre-qualify. And we were able to save about two months of his life each year through the sales process. He's on the Facebook group. I know he wouldn't mind me saying his name, but I'll let him remain anonymous. But he's actually on the Facebook group live right now. So if you guys don't have any questions, I can't help. Live one-on-one. Yeah, he's anonymous. Live one-on-one or coaching 101 is always come prepared with questions. You guys should be having like 500 questions in the chat right now. Like just as many questions as you could possibly think of. Otherwise, what's the point of being on these lives? You're here to learn something, I hope. What's this about? Oscar, what do you mean? What do you mean, what's this about? Do I have a kitchen designer? No, I don't have a kitchen designer. How do you find one? You just reach out to your local designers. First thing you do is you talk to all your contractor buddies or any contractor you know. Hey, do you have a designer? Yes. Who is it? It's so-and-so. Where do they work at? Right? So you can use your network to find out where they're at. You can also, I mean, to me, finding a designer shouldn't be that hard. Go to your cabinet, all your kitchen suppliers, and ask them who they use. If they have someone in-house, ask that person if they know someone who does it on the side or if they do it. A lot of these guys that work for a kitchen cabinet company that do designs there, they may do it on the side. They may have a side business. I mean, there's lots of ways to find a designer. User something or another, if so, or Oscar says construction questions. Oscar, we're just doing training here. This is I'm a contracting business coach. I just help contractors in their construction business. Jared says, I just started a painting company. What's a recommendation to start looking for gaining work? Jared, you need to start dialing for dollars, my friend. You need to start calling all the referral sources that you know, introducing yourself and seeing how you can help them in their business. You need to make sure you have a website. If you don't have one, go get a cheap free one. I don't care if it looks like crap. You need to have something better than nothing. And then as you have funds available, get a professionally designed website, start a Google listing, get your reviews started there. Any free what do they call that? The gosh dang it, my brain quit working. The places where they have your information, like listing, like there's all kinds of websites that will say, here's, contractors in your area. Any place that has a free listing, go out there and fill it out. I mean, there's like 50 or 60 that I know of off the top of my head. I don't know their names, but there's like 50 or 60 on a list. I can't remember the stinking name for them. Somebody tell me what those are called. But they're like databases, basically. If there's a free database that you can put your name in, go do that. Why? Because it helps with SEO. If you put your website in there, if you go fill out your name on these databases and there's 50 of them, then you put your website, then all 50 of those will link back to your website. That helps with backlinking, SEO, all that stuff. Those are free things that you can do. Don't cost you anything. You can get on networks like Nextdoor, start connecting with people, start posting things in there, post things on social media. There's lots of ways you can get work. Derek says, I'd like to talk to you one day and get a general idea of how you could help take business next. Why don't you, let's just schedule it, man. Derek, go to my profile, send me a message. We'll get you scheduled. We don't need to wait one day. We can talk now. I'm not going to sell you anything. I promise. No, screw Craigslist. No, Craigslist is not the place to find people. Craigslist is the place to find day labor who you might get an hour out of them before they pass out. I'm not saying anything else about that. Nope. Yelp's a waste of time for most people. There is an exception. There's always exceptions to everything, guys. I mean, let's just being real. There's always exceptions. The problem is everybody thinks they're the exception, and that's never the case. It's like 1% of the time, your business, your city, your type of work, your location, your customers, like 1% of the time, it's true. But we think 99% of the time it's true. So I like to use absolutes, which is really just a polarizing way of getting people fired up on purpose. That's called engagement engineering, if you guys don't know. I'm letting all the secrets out of the bag today. A lot of the videos and stuff that I do and say is on purpose to generate emotional based responses. Why would I want to generate emotional based responses from people? How does this emotional thing work? Just got done talking about it for 45 minutes about how we buy and make decisions based on emotions. So why would I want to say things that would cause people to have an emotional reaction? It's because when you comment and you respond and you like and you share and you do all these things, it increases engagement, which increases awareness, which gets me out there, right? So Yelp is there's probably like maybe 2 cities in the US where having good Yelp reviews is valuable. Chicago is one that I know of, maybe New York. And that's just because for whatever reason in these cities, Yelp has become like the number one source of getting information from the user base. But in the rest of the world and the rest of the US, Yelp is pretty much worthless. So like unless you live in New York or maybe Chicago, or there may be a couple other little cities where Yelp is really important, it's a viable resource for the users there, then it would make sense to be on Yelp. But for the rest of the country, if you're not in those major cities, there's no point in being on Yelp. Eric Chapman says, a new residential painting drywall company. What's the way to break into commercial work? Just start calling general contractors. Start making relationships with general contractors. Derek says, I have a unique way I do business, and so far it's worked for me, I think. No upfront pricing, all hourly. Yikes, Derek. Yikes. Heavy screening process to regulate tire kickers, estimating over the phone and less design. What do you mean no upfront pricing? Like you just start the job and you haven't collected anything and you do it all by the hour? Yeah, Ramert says Yelp will sell your phone number to a million marketers. Absolutely. And they'll also hold you hostage. They'll hold your reviews hostage. Derek, let's get on a call, man. Just reach out to me. We'll jump on a Zoom call and we'll talk through it. Tell you what I think. I don't think any contractor should ever set foot on a person's property without collecting a deposit. And I don't think you should ever charge by hourly unless it's just a specific, like you do service work. If you're like a plumbing repair person, and even then you shouldn't charge by the hour. Hourly is safe. Hourly is safe for you and potentially the customer. I say potentially because if you got somebody that's not very good, they're going to rate, the hourly rates, or amount of time is going to take longer, which costs the customer more. But from a contractor's perspective, when you do hourly, it's like you're saying you're putting a limit on how much money you can make. And so therefore, when you charge by the hour, the only way you can make more money is by working more hours. And most people, if I asked you, if you had, let's say you had let's say your water heater went out and you're calling a plumber, and the plumber says, how much do you charge to replace a water heater? And they say, well, it's $500 for the water heater, and then I charge by the hour $150 an hour. And they say, well, how long does it normally take to replace a water heater? It just depends. It may take an hour, it could take 8 hours. Well, now you just like threw the difference of a $650 charge up to, potentially $1,500. And now I don't know. I have no idea. Versus if I said, how much does it cost to replace a water heater? And you said, it's a flat rate of $750. Now I know it's $750. I don't have to worry about the what if it goes up to $1,500. And you could come in and swap out the water heater and be there in 2 hours, and you basically are making, whatever the rate is. I'm just making up stuff here. Most people would rather have a fixed amount, even if it's higher than what they're comfortable with, than paying an hourly rate, even if the chance of them getting paying less than what it actually is. Even if you tell them there's a high probability that it's going to be less, most people would rather pay more for a fixed amount than for the opportunity of it being less, even though because there's the risk of it being more. Does that make sense? Texas says I only do cost plus because I built very large custom homes with a lot. Texas, that's a lot different. Cost plus makes a lot of sense in custom home building, as long as you're getting a good percentage. User said, what would you do if they don't want to sign a mechanics lien before starting the job? Why would you need them to sign a mechanics lien before starting the job? I don't understand that. Why would you need them to sign that before starting the job? Are you talking commercial or residential? I don't know why you would want them to sign a mechanics lien. Guys, I did over 2,500 jobs. 2,500 jobs, and I've never filed a lien, ever. I never filed a lien. I never had them sign a lien. Probably about at least 40% of those jobs, I never even had a contract. And I'm not saying that you should do that. I'm just saying I didn't. Because when you learn how to effectively communicate with people, all of these problems that you hear contractors tell horror stories about, 99% of those issues go away when you actually learn how to communicate with people. I'm not trying to be mean to anybody, but that's the reality. When you know how to communicate, 99% of problems in business go away. Declared value over 2,500 on a parcel requires an NOC in my municipality. I don't know exactly what that means, just being honest with you, because that was not a required of mine. If your city requires you to have some type of mechanics lien before you start a project, then it's a requirement of the city. I don't know why they wouldn't want to sign it. I mean, that to me, that's kind of a no-brainer. I'm not familiar with that, so I don't know the exact specifics of the legality of what they require. But if it's a requirement, then there shouldn't be any issue to get them to sign it. It's like, hey, this is a requirement. It's like pulling permits, right? I could not pull permits and run the risk of getting caught and getting fined and getting your project shut down, or legally I need to pull permits, and that's an extra cost or an extra time or an extra requirement. So if you want me to do your job, I have to pull permits. That's just a requirement, right? So it's the same with your mechanics lien. It's like, this is a requirement. I have to do this. One question you can ask them, though, Derek, just as a giveaway or a leave away for you, takeaway. If someone asks you, or someone doesn't want to file a mechanics lien or sign a mechanics lien that's a requirement on your behalf, just simply ask him, what's got you concerned about signing this lien? What's got you concerned about signing this lien? Don't ever ask why, guys. Parting advice, never ask your clients why anything. Why will give you a negative response. Why is that? Because when we were kids, we were always asked, why did you do that? Why did you hit your brother? Why did you leave your shoes out? Why? So why elicits a negative emotional response. So when you're talking to your clients, don't ever ask them why. There's one exception, and that's when you're actually trying to get them to convince themselves. And you say, I'm just curious, why should you hire us? Right now they have to defend their position as to why they're even thinking about hiring you. And that's an advanced tactic that I don't even really teach, because it's really not even something you need to use. But don't ever ask people why. Why won't you sign this lien? That's an accusatory question. What's keeping you from signing this lien? What concerns do you have about signing this lien? Right? That's a better way to ask that question. Rob says, do you always pull permits? I did not always pull permits, Rob. If it was any kind of substantial remodel, yes. But if it was like replacing a front door, my city required you to pull a permit. I never pulled a permit on that. It's stupid, because for them, it's just a money grab. They don't even come and inspect it. So there were times where I didn't pull permits. But anything that was substantial remodeling that had to have, inspections, always pulled permits. No, I mean, basic bathroom, kitchen, unless that was just like replacing a vanity. All we're doing is swapping out a vanity or something simple. I may not pull a permit on that, but if it's a full gut, then yeah, I would pull permits. And it depends on what city too. Like, there's certain counties around here where you don't even need permits. So it just depends. I would always try to encourage you guys to be legal in what you do. It just saves you a headache. You don't want to build a business based on trying to get by, you don't want to build a business that has the potential to come back and bite you, right? Pay your taxes. Sounds simple to say that, but pay your taxes. Don't try to get $50,000 cash. Customer wants to pay you $50,000 cash for a bathroom or kitchen, and you're going to put that in your pocket and not put it on your taxes. Like, that's just dumb. Someone wants to pay you $500 cash. Am I going to say that, you're bad if you put that in your pocket and don't turn that in? Probably not. But if you're like doing things like that on a regular basis, you're just setting yourself up for failure. Gabe says, if I'm subcontracting work for a company and he wants to pay hourly per week, is he wrong? Is he wrong because he wants to pay you hourly per week? No. You would be wrong for wanting to work in that condition. Yeah, Rob, I agree with you on that, man. The timing is definitely an issue, especially with bathrooms. 100% with you on that. You have to just factor that into your estimates. You have to factor in the fact that you may have 2 to 3 hours of wasted time on a project because you're waiting for an inspector. And the way you get around that too, Rob, is you start building relationships with the inspectors. Most contractors don't like inspectors. They kind of, because most of them are power hungry. They're a pain in the butt. They want you to redo an entire house because they don't like one little thing. Like, most people don't like inspectors. And I'm not saying that you have to change your opinion about that, But what I am saying is that if you befriend them and you actually treat them with respect, you will be surprised how much easier it will be to get inspections done on your projects. We had an inspector in one county where when I worked for a developer, and he was known, like he was known for having contractors rip off like half of a brick on a house because they didn't have a 1-inch air gap between the brick and the sheathing, and he would just like make you take, like literally half the brick off the house and redo it. And he was just, just an arrogant pain in the butt. Nobody liked him. Nobody. We befriended him, and guess what? Whenever there were issues where there wasn't an air gap, guess who got the pass on redoing all of it? We may have to redo some of it, but we didn't get the full "I'm going to stick it to you" experience. We got the "Hey, I'm willing to work with you and figure out a better solution here," all because we just befriended him. That's it. El Vaquero says, "How would you bid a roof repair?" I know I maybe did 6 roof repairs in my lifetime. I don't like doing roof repairs. I don't really know how to best answer that for you. Is if you got to take in all the variations, the variables that can come into play there. So I can't really help you much on the roof repair. I don't do roofs. I don't have enough experience with roof repairs, to be honest. All I can tell you is that when you're doing repair jobs, you should always plan on kind of worst case scenario. A lot of us like to bid it based on best case scenario. Oh man, I can get in there and knock this repair out in 6 hours. It's, make good money. But what we don't do is factor in that, maybe you got to set up scaffolding to do this repair. Maybe the substrate is messed up and you got to replace that. Maybe that light leads into the rafter being rotted and there has to be repair. It's just worst case scenario. So if I think I can do this repair in 6 hours, I'm definitely going to bid it for at least a day minimum, 8-hour day minimum. I may even bid it for a day and a half. It's much easier, guys. And I'm not saying you have to do this. It's much easier at the end of a project to give people money back if it just like was the easiest job you ever did, and you thought it was going to take 5 days to do this repair. It only took you 1 day. Like, it's much easier to go to a client and say, yeah, I know I told you $3,000, but this wasn't even remotely close to what I thought. It's only going to end up costing you $1,200. And every single person on the face of the earth would be ecstatic with you if you did that. It's easier to say, guess what? Good news. It's not $3,000, it's $1,200, than to say, oh, sorry, bad news. I know I told you $1,200. It's actually $3,000. It's much easier to do it the other way. I promise you. Hourly is safe. And there are some situations where it's smart to do hourly, especially if you're doing like exploratory. There's termite damage and you have no idea the extent of it. You probably don't want to bid that a fixed price because you have no idea. Like, it could take you 2 hours to find the extent. It could take you a whole day. That type of work, hourly. But if you're just like painting, there's no reason you should be charging hourly for painting. All right, guys, I appreciate you hanging out with me. Electrical service work, no remodel, rewires, potentially, Derek, but I would still try to create packages as much as possible. If you're doing electrical, a service panel change out, it's $3,500. It's $4,500. If you're doing a generator install, it's $7,500 or whatever, right? It's not by the hour. That's what I'm saying. If someone's like, hey, my light switch doesn't work. Yesterday in my house, I go in there to use the bathroom. My light switch doesn't work. My lights don't work. Later on that day, I turn it on. It works. Probably a bad switch. Like, if you're trying to troubleshoot that, I'm perfectly okay with doing it by the hour, but you got to have a minimum charge and a trip charge to make it worth it. but I'm just not a big fan of the hourly work. Yeah, there's also a lot of overwatch with hourly stuff. So, all right, guys, thanks for hanging out with me. If you want help on training, help with sales training, I have a program that is severely underpriced. It's only $99 a month. That's it. $99 a month. You get full access to all of my sales training in the profit sales system, weekly coaching calls with training on how to do this, how to implement it. There's a private Facebook group. You can work with other people, ask your questions throughout the week. It's severely underpriced, and I'm probably going to stop doing it pretty soon because it doesn't serve me anything. I'm just cheating myself, to be honest. It's $99 a month. You can cancel anytime. Like, it's nothing. And guys who are in this program who've went through it have made that money 1,000 times over in their sales process. So you can get access to it for $99 a month through the Sales Accelerator. If you're on TikTok, you can just go on my profile, send me a message, or go on the links and get access there. If you're on Facebook or YouTube, you can shoot a message, comment, or go to my website. You can also go down below, hammerandgrind.com. Let me throw it up here. Boom, look at that technology. You can go to hammerandgrind.com and sign up for it there too. $99 a month. I'll teach you everything about sales you need to know. Thanks, guys. Have a great evening. I'll talk to you soon.